Okay.
Mm.
Yo, what's up, 828 fam? I am super, I'm going to use elated to be able to enter into this conversation with none other than Taliesha Garrett, who is a dear friend and sister to me, but also the senior program leader for accelerated executive development at Boeing and the director of operations at 828. And we're honored today to have this conversation in Women's History Month. One thing that we want to do is center the voices and the faces and the experiences of women, not who are only making history, but who also being present to creating a better future for other people. And so we felt it would be nobody better to have this conversation with than T. T, welcome to the stage. Welcome to 828 Media. We are so happy to have you. Can you just briefly introduce us to you beyond what I've just said?
Sure. Thanks, Rees, for having me here. I usually stay behind the scenes with 828. So I think even when you asked me to do this, I was like, well, can I just, can we just do it together with somebody else? And absolutely said no. So I am Lawrence's wife, which is a huge role that I honor. We have a daughter, Dylan, who many of you have seen stories and heard about. But professionally, I am a senior program leader at Boeing. I manage a group of 18 VPs, and my role is to help them accelerate their development to eventually attain C-suite level roles. And so I take them through a 3-year experiential journey and identify gaps, and based on those gaps, create experiences to help them expand their capability. On the 828 side, I do all of the back office operations as far as invoicing and contracting and all the stuff that people don't usually see, and help Lawrence really continue to craft his skill and ensure that he's able to have the capacity and capability to do what he loves to do.
Keyword capacity. That's what I heard there, right? Like your capacity has to be huge, not only just to do what you're doing for 828, but also for Boeing, and then to be a mom and a wife at the same time. So how did you even get to this level of having this amount of capacity and knowing how to execute with the capacity that you have?
Yeah, I wish it was a story of like being super intentional with my capacity, but it wasn't up until recently. And not to give a shameless plug, but a lot of that was due to you and the coaching you and I did together, right? But it is Women's History Month. So, I grew up just really without other options. Like for me, it was never an option to not be successful. And the vision of what success has morphed and evolved and matured as I've gotten older. But even at a immature lens of success, it was just always like, I have got to do this. This is so the capacity always felt like it was just a means to, like I just had to do it. Tired or stressed or whatever it was, and it wasn't always healthy. So I'll be really honest about that. But getting to a point where I felt content with myself, with my life, with my family, it was one of those non-negotiables. And for many years, and I continue to just be relentless in what it takes to do that. The thing that shifted for me is that I now am able to do that in a much healthier approach, a much more balanced approach. But there was just always this relentless pursuit of wanting to redefine legacy for our family. And I think because that was my aim, the capacity I just figured it out.
Wow, redefining legacy. That is definitely going to be the title of this. So you talked about being content. What does that look like to be content on a journey of authenticity that you wear authenticity very well? That is something that is one of my favorite things about you. But a lot of people can probably see you, I think, in the spaces, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like in corporate. How what's the word I'm looking for? How often is it that you find people being authentic in the spaces that you reside in?
Gosh, very infrequent, honestly. And when I find someone that is being authentic, I tend to latch onto them. And I want to connect with them, and I want to go deeper. And I don't care what level it's at. So I don't care if it's, the janitor to the CEO. Like if I sense authenticity, I want to latch onto that. But what I find often is that in corporate spaces, it's just super performative. And it's for so many years, literally up until about the last comfortably 3 years or so, I've had to suppress so much of my authenticity because it wasn't received well. It wasn't a good fit for corporate spaces. And so I learned how to perform myself. I learned how to suppress the feelings, the thoughts, the what I knew should be a different course of direction in order to appease to the norm, which is a very, very male dominated white space in most I've been in 2 major corporations. Both are very, very, very male dominated, and mainly Eurocentric, right? So having to really suppress a lot of who I am to show up and be perceived as being effective has been the journey.
So how does a Black woman operate, right? Like you just said, being as authentic as you are, today, even navigate? Can you give us a couple key pointers on how do you navigate a male Eurocentric space and still succeed at the rate that you're succeeding?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been 2 things. One is relentless performance. And I don't mean performance from a show like I described earlier, like showing up and performing like a character, but the idea of adding value. So I have always been really, I've always been keen on ensuring that the space I show up in is a space I'm going to add value in. And one of the things that is a universal language is value, right? As far as now, it may be different how that shows up in different ethnicities and different cultures, but people want to feel like there is value being gained in whatever they perceive value to be, right? Well, in corporate settings, value is about progress. Are you making progress? Are you achieving results? Are you coaching others? Are you demonstrating leadership? So I was really keen on, I want to make sure that as I am navigating this world as a Black woman, the one thing that will never be negotiable is the level of value I add. So I'm relentless in that. I also found that once I'm able to add and demonstrate value, some of those conversations that are more self-serving for me about the inequities or the disparities, right, are easier to have once I've been able to demonstrate value. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That's just what I found to be a recipe in corporate spaces that has worked well for me. I think outside of that, I've had to be really intentional about putting my career in its proper perspective. So there was a lot of my early career life where it was my identity. Like my identity was where I worked, my title, my pay, my position, my degrees, right? Like that was my identity. And as I've matured, it's been really freeing to redefine who I am or get to know who I am outside of what I accomplished, right? And so I think those 2 pillars of ensuring that when I do show up, corporate is an exchange of value. So ensuring that when I show up, I'm doing my part to add value, simultaneously making sure that my identity isn't tied to the value you perceive me adding.
Mic drop right here, and we still have some time to go. Let's talk about, have you always wanted to be in corporate? Did you see yourself being even in these spaces?
I have. So one of the things that is unique about my upbringing is that my mom was a super young mom. She was 16, right? So my grandma mostly raised me. And for those of you who know my grandma, blonde hair, blue eyes, right? She's since passed, but white lady. And what I've shared in other discussions is that I feel like a large part of me was able to leverage her privilege because I didn't experience some of the inequities growing up. Well, let me say it this way. I didn't realize I was experiencing some of those inequities growing up because she sheltered me from a lot of that, right? And so from a very early age, it was, she would go do a lot of like fundraising and things like that. She would take me with her and we go to these big office spaces. And I remember saying, Grandma, like, I'm going to be in this I'm going to be in this office. I'm going to be in these meetings. I'm going to be in these executive meetings. Mm-hmm. And one day in particular, we actually went, long before I worked at Russell, we went to the Russell building because of the Russell Foundation. And she was getting some funding there. We went to the 12th floor, and it was their boardroom meeting. I remember saying, I'm going to be in this room working one day. And sure enough, I mean, granted, it was 15 or so, 20 years later, but I was in that room working. And I'll never forget the moment when I was sitting in that boardroom and I'm like, this has been my destiny. Like, this has been it.
Wow.
You know, so yes, being in corporate spaces was always an aspiration of mine. And I was able to really leverage like my grandma to be able to cheer me on in that and make me believe it was possible.
How powerful to one, even have Marks, right? Just in your corner, having that, to leverage that, and to even, you know, let you know that, yeah, there's nothing that you won't be able to do. And to even be in a space, right? They say your gifts will make room for you, and your name is in spaces, and you actually acted on that. Right. I think because I'm a Leo too, I can definitely see like, oh yeah, we know we're gonna get what we want to get, what we have to get. But the fact that that actually came to fruition for you is amazing. You know, do you know how old you were when that happened, or do you remember?
Oh, I was probably 7 or 8.
Wow. That's phenomenal. I would say, to be 8 years old and stake your claim in somewhere that, right, and knowing that you belong there. So let's talk about belonging, right? Because I think that's the bigger piece, right? Again, with being a Black woman navigating, you know, white male-centered spaces, did you feel a sense of belonging when you first stepped, whether it was Russell or to Boeing?
I felt a pseudo sense of belonging early on. And I say pseudo because I didn't realize the full extent of my being Black in a corporate setting. As I shared, I was able to be, you know, it's like growing up, it's kind of a weird dichotomy. It's like, I know I'm Black, I know my skin is different, right? I know there are all of these stories of things that are happening and disparities for people who look like me, in all different shades. But I always had this white woman who was right there, like, yeah, but not, that's not for you. Don't worry about that. That's not gonna happen to you. Yeah, but don't worry, that's not gonna happen. So I took that into corporate America very naively to say. And I was probably like, I don't know, 27, 28. It was a rude awakening of like, oh, wow, I really am a Black woman in corporate America. When I started seeing some of the promotions being passed up, I started seeing some of the, like, why, how come no one looks like me up there? Like, what, you know, what's going on? And I started seeing that perceived glass ceiling. But I came in very naive, very feeling like they're all for me, feeling like this is a safe place, feeling like I can do all things here in this corporate space. And as I got older and matured, it was like the veil started to drop, and it's like, oh wow, okay, this is what that means. This is what that system looks like. This is what that's designed for. Got it. So yeah, so I would say I started off with a sense of belonging that in hindsight wasn't real. But now it's hard to feel like you belong in a space that wasn't designed for you, you know? So I won't say I have a sense of belonging. What I'll say is I have a sense of purpose. And I know I'm here for a specific reason. And I know that reason is just a part of my journey. And so that's what kind of carries me in, that fills the gap of like knowing this is in a space that was designed for people like me. That's what fills the gap, is being anchored in my purpose.
So tell me, what kind of preparation do you have to do to even be this confident? Because again, you are, right, being a Black woman leading future C-suite execs, and I'm assuming a lot of them do not look like you. And so it must take a lot of preparation to be that authentically confident and stand in front of somebody else who knows, who may be thinking, right, different, like, why are you even here? How did you get here? Who can have all these different perceived, you know, notions and thoughts about you. So what does that look like? Fill us in on the tips to be as confident as you are.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's ironic because I find my confidence most in relying on the experts to do the things they're really good at. And what I mean by that is I know I'm strong at showing up and being able to deliver and execute, right? I'm strong at being able to have dialogue and draw out and create space for people to really thrive. That's where I'm strong at. But when it comes to like specific learning, I have not been a CEO of a Fortune 50 company, so I can't tell you how to be a CEO of a Fortune 50 company. But what I can do is I know there are some brilliant people in the industry that have been, and I can connect you to them, and I can establish mentoring sessions. And so I think one of the reasons that we become so insecure is because we carry the weight of thinking we have to be the expert in everything. And I think the more that we do that, the more that it just plays on insecurities that are probably already there, right? But it just starts to expose them. And so my confidence comes from being completely transparent, being strong in what I know I'm strong at, right? So this is what I do know, and this is where I can deliver. Here's where you can count on me. And then being completely humble to say, I don't know that. Let me go connect you to someone who does. And so I think the collection of those three is where my confidence comes from. And I think it also goes to the comment I made earlier about identity. Like, my identity is not tied to what they perceive of me anymore. And for a long time, that was the case. So knowing that when I come home, I've created a space in my home that feels like home. I've created a space that people walk in, they're like, wow, this feels good in here. Like the energy feels really good. I can just chill. I can let loose. I can take my coat off, like that's what gives me confidence. That's what really fuels me.
What for some reason just came up for me is integrity, right? Like seeing you, I think that's a part of your authenticity, a part of your values, as well, and not losing out on who you are and who you've worked to be and become. And I think it takes integrity to be that, because ultimately you're saying, I'm not going to sell out. And now that you've established this, I'll say newfound, like what level of freedom of what it feels like to be you, to be yourself, to show up, and that you can provide value, your worth. It takes integrity to continue, to live that out. Can you talk to us a little about just your journey and relationship with integrity?
Oh man. Yeah. I think integrity is certainly, it has to be a foundational thread, right? Because the weight of trying to be something or someone that you are not, it becomes literally unbearable. And I know, like, as I think about my career history, right, there's a few key moments where I'm like, that was a moment of just strengthening, like really anchoring my integrity in what I believe in, really anchoring my integrity in who I am. Some of them have been at Boeing. I had a really contentious manager. She was really trying to bully me. She was playing a lot of race cards. And I remember coming home and telling Lawrence, like, I'm probably gonna lose my job, but I can't go out. Like, if I do lose my job, it's going to be based on the truth. I'm not gonna go out thinking that this is okay or letting anyone think this is okay. And I think those are those kind of crucible moments where it's like, wow, okay, you're re-solidified, because it's really easy to pretend. It's just so easy to pretend in a corporate space because everybody's pretending. And so it's easy to be like, ooh, yeah, like, I'm going to position myself here and posture myself here and do this and do that and politic here. And it's just like, for someone like me, I can literally feel it. And so it's just a commitment that I've made to, I don't want people to walk into my office and feel that. Like they have to posture or position or be presumptuous or pretentious to be in my presence. Like I want people to feel drawn in and like it's a mutual exchange of benefit and energy, not like they should be lucky they're in my presence. Like I don't like that, you know what I mean? So and I think that all has to do with this integrity and confidence and security, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And one thing I always say is like your energy precedes you. And regardless, like your energy will precede you. So I can only imagine the space that you're providing, for people at work and in other spaces. And I know the people who will see this, your is going to precede you. I know it's going to permeate through the screen for them. So question is, how important is it to have role models and leaders who look like you as you've been on this journey and just in general?
Yeah, it's important to an extent. It's important, it is in any field you're in. I think it's important to see representation of who you are, right? To know that there's someone who has achieved what I aspire to achieve, that looks like me or has a similar background to me, and things like that. But I think sometimes also we take like the role model word too loosely. We just find someone. I think oftentimes we tend to find someone who's in a position of like positional authority, and because they have a title, we're like, that's that's a role model. And my experience has been like, I've met a lot of like really wealthy, prominent people with fancy titles whose lives are a wreck. And I'm like, I would never want to be like them. And I've even had, I've had other coaches kind of say, you know, you should mentor so-and-so. And I'm like, I don't want to lead like they lead. I don't want to do what they do. I don't want my spouse to perceive me how I've seen them show up and act together. And so I think having role models that represent you is important, but I think we have to be really particular on who we allow in our lives and what we're trying to model from a role model. And for me, there's few people that I look at and I'm like, I want to be like you, because I feel like my path is so unique. Like I feel like my path is for me. And so like there's aspects that I can learn from anyone. I can learn from you. I can learn from Lawrence. I can learn from our CEO at Boeing, right? There's pieces I can learn from everyone, but I don't often find myself saying like, you know, I want to be like that person. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not something that I really ever like rallied around.
Yeah,
Now,
no, I think that that's huge.
I think having people in your corner that support and advocate for you is critical, especially in corporate spaces. So I just wanted to differentiate that from a role model, but yeah.
Yeah, elaborate on that, right? Because the one of the main reasons why I want to do this is shine light on women in corporate. That's not something I think that is talked about enough, or especially Black women in corporate, and the fact that we know someone, right, that's a part of the 828 Foundation. I want to make sure that we bring that to light. Like, what does that mean to be a woman and a Black woman in corporate?
It means, goodness, sometimes it means pure exhaustion. Sometimes it means a lot of, you know, there are a lot of women, Black women early in their career that are looking at me to pave the way, you know, so that feels heavy. That feels really heavy. And I think more so than anything, it just feels like you stick out. It just feels like you don't fit in. And I've had to learn to be intentional about being okay not fitting in, you know, and that's where that having an advocate and folks that are going to really rally behind you is so important, because a lot of those doors that we as Black women specifically are trying to gain access to, you know, frankly, white men have the keys to, when we're trying to get to those higher levels in corporations, those more prominent positions, if you will. And so having folks that are willing to invest in you from a place of, I'm going to advocate, I'm going to bring your name into spaces where they may not know who you are. I'm going to ensure that when the work is done, people are clear on who performed the work, right? But being a Black woman in corporate is really, really hard. This is probably a bit of a provocative example, but you know me, Rees, so what else would you expect? I was telling Lawrence, and I got off my last meeting and I just started crying because I was so tired. And I said, Lawrence is like, you know, what's going on? And I said, you know what I feel like? I feel like I'm just a house slave. Like, I feel like I'm a house slave. So what I envision of a house slave is like, you're in the house, so you're around all the owners, and you hear conversations that other slaves don't have, and you get a little bit of, hope, because like you're in close proximity to the people with the money or the power, right? And you're hearing bits and pieces of conversations, and you're kind of, so then you start to feel like maybe I am kind of part of the family, like maybe I am part of this family too. And then it's like, and then there's just moments in time where I'm like, no, I'm really just still a house slave. And to me, that's what it feels like being a Black woman in corporate America. It feels like this constant tug of war of being brought into close enough proximity to feel like you're an equal, to feel like you can make a difference, to feel like, and then being reminded of, nope, but you're still a slave.
Real. That there's no other way to describe that, but is real. I think you painted a picture that made me think of Jay-Z has a song where he's talking about OJ, like, and just saying where OJ was like, I'm not Black, I'm OJ. Okay.
Right.
Like, so just really trying to, remind him like, nah, you just a house, like, and I think again, here, I think we need, right, these reminders of why we fight for equality, right? You saying that is a reminder of why we do, right? 828 exists in the first place, right? To shine light on that, to bring people home, so that way people know that there's a space, and people who are fighting, to shine light on the practices and policies and procedures that are taking place, that are even cultivating this feeling into others. And we know that all spaces, right, in the country were created to center white and maleness. And that is what makes it so hard for people like ourselves to even navigate them. And it's heartbreaking to know that we have to show up. We get to show up every day, but the same space that we're showing up to serve doesn't always serve us back in the ways that we need it to. And that's when it becomes heavy and demoralizing. And so when I ask about how do you stay so confident, it's because of that, right? So I asked that a couple minutes ago, and somebody may not have understood why you need to be so confident, but it's like, because of that, right? Like, yes, I'm smiling. Yes, I'm doing this because I'm blessed and honored to be doing this, but don't get it twisted. Absolutely. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, and you are clearly wearing a crown, in a space that was not created for you. And so, I say to people, don't know that you're not in this alone, whatever space it is that you are in. This is why it's so important, like you said, to have people in your corner who are going to applaud you and motivate you and support you, and just let you cry when it gets too heavy. Just let me cry. Just let me complain. Just let me get this off. And complaining doesn't mean I hate what I'm doing, right? Because both can exist at the same time. Allow me to feel. And when I ask for solutions, provide me a solution. But if I don't ask for a solution, just shut up and let me do what I need to do. And I think that all of those things that you just said, your story of mentorship, of leadership we even say people to open the door, right? You had a grandmother who opened the door to show you that you could believe and dream, and what it was like to even step foot in a space that you would then later impact, that has now catapulted you to where you are now, but also of what it means to be a mentor. And I am a representation of your mentorship, right? What it means to walk in this authentic journey of being yourself and being comfortable in the skin that you're in, which so few people even have the courage to do. Right. I think so few people have the courage to just be themselves, regardless of where they're at. And you're doing it in one of the widest spaces, right? One of the most political, money-driven value exchange. And you are showing what does it mean to proceed in that with grace. And I think it is amazing. So
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. A quick two more questions. What does Black excellence mean to you?
Ooh. I'm not sure I've reflected on that question succinctly. So bear with me. I think Black excellence means remembering the sacrifices of our ancestors and redeeming the time for generations to come. That's what I think Black excellence means.
How did you not think about that succinctly and then just come up with a dictionary answer? Like, I feel like if I Googled it, that's exactly what would pop up. So I'm confused.
I just, huh.
Just happens. Okay, cool. Wow. Can you run that back for us? If you remember, I can just Google it.
I mean, I think I said Black excellence is remembering the sacrifices of our ancestors. I'd add one word in there, remembering the sacrifices of our ancestors and leveraging that to redeem time for future generations. I think that's Black excellence. And I think that's also what, you asked about capacity and confidence. It's like, well, I have a 9-year-old daughter a Black daughter looking at me every day asking, why are you in that meeting if it makes you feel that way? Like asking me the questions that are like, that sounds boring. Why are you doing it? And I'm like, that's a great question. Why am I doing this? But I have that generation right here in my home, which is so much fuel to keep going. Like, it's so much fuel to be like, I'm not going to tolerate that. No, I don't have to talk. No, what? No, this isn't how this works. Whereas I don't know if I've had that before. Right. And so again, just part of that maturity of like really seeing the legacy of like, I'm looking at sacrifices of, I mentioned my mom had me at 16. I'm seeing her sacrifices. I'm seeing my grandma's sacrifices. I'm seeing my, the women in my lineage, their sacrifices, and then I'm seeing the future. And so I'm like, wow, I'm here holding these two sides. And I feel like Black excellence is ensuring that I'm redeeming time for my daughter and leveraging their experiences and sacrifices.
Wow. You being able to witness sacrifices has given you the courage that cast away fear, right? To blaze the trails, right? That's what I hear. You've witnessed sacrifices. Those sacrifices gave you capacity. That capacity increased your courage for you to just drive out the fear to say, I can continue to do me and be me, and God will open the doors, and it is what it is. But you know that you didn't lose out on your integrity. You know that you added value, and you were being a role model, right? As a wife, as a mother, as a sister, and a friend. And I mean, really, what much more can you ask for somebody than that? So are there any tools that you can give people, I mean, whether they're in corporate or not, that they can just take away, whether it be books, podcasts, I mean, sit down and journal, go to therapy, drink some more water, work out? What do you got for us?
Yeah. Oh man. I think therapy is important. I'm a huge advocate of therapy. I've personally been in therapy for over 10 years now. And I just, we keep it as such a taboo thing in a lot of spaces, but it is so powerful. Like, therapy is so powerful to be able to have a space where you can just let go. More recently, I found a Black therapist who's a woman, and the difference that makes, oh my gosh. Like, quick example. So my hair is usually curly, and recently I've straightened it just out of curiosity, nothing else, right? But in talking with my therapist, she noticed it. First thing, she goes, "Your hair is straight." And I said, "Yeah, and she was like, "I like it. Now, is there more to that, or did you just straighten your hair?" And I'm like, we were virtual, but I just wanted to give her, I'm like, only you would see me and ask that, because everyone else is just like, it's cute. And she's like, now, does something happen at work? Are you not fitting in? Do you need to have straight hair? Do you need to be more white? What's happening? Like, and I just loved it. I'm like, you know what? It was really just out of curiosity, because I wanted to try it straight for a while. It's been curly for a couple of years, and she was like, okay, I'm just checking in. So the power of like having a Black woman that can go in the depths of my heart and soul and fears and pain without judgment. Oh my gosh. Like, that's invaluable. So I think that is key. I am reading a pretty cool book. I have not finished it, but so far so good. This is a lady I actually used to work with at Russell Investment. She was my HR director. And so she wrote this book, Crushing Racism in Corporate America. So I like to continual learning is important for me. I think, learning new things, trying new things. And I also think creative expression is really important for me. Like I like to have my creative side of my brain working. So I tend to have a new hobby, a new this, a new that, something where I can be creative. It's a really cool outlet. I know you're laughing because you're like, yeah, I know. But that's something for me too. Yeah, I think those are the key things that come to mind right now. I do want to add though, and Rees, you mentioned earlier, like, I'm smiling and I do love the work that I do. And I feel like, I'm proud of the life we've built here. But it is not easy. Like there is, behind this smile, there is pain, there is tears, there is trauma, there is like, it is not easy. And I'm constantly, even though I show up in this presence of confidence, I'm constantly replaying the tapes in my head of, how did I show up here? Are they going to perceive it like this? Do I have to go apologize? Do I have to go coddle this person? Do I have to, so there's a lot of that happening in the background of this persona of confidence and a smile, which is authentic, 100% authentic. I am confident and I'm happy. Don't get me wrong, but just the depth of that is a lot of other stuff that'll probably be a whole nother segment.
A whole nother, because you kept going and I was like, listen, don't make me write down another list of questions, because that's that real, right? And I think it's interesting, right? When I talked about having role models and leaders who look like you, how you positioned it of like, right there from the role model space wasn't that important, but to have a therapist and people who speak life into me and who can affirm me from a non-judgmental space, I need that because you're going to see me. And so I love that you said that, because that is huge. Having a Black woman therapist is much different than having a white woman therapist. It definitely hits on another level. So thank you. Obviously, we could go on for hours talking about all things life, leadership, growth, development, and or we can just cut up because we can do that too. So can you tell the people where they can keep up with you? What's the best place? Because, I don't know how many people knew that you embodied all of this prior to this. And so now I know they're going to want to follow. So where can they follow you?
I am on LinkedIn all day long. I like to just be out there and see what's happening in the industry and stuff. So you can find me there. You can also reach out to me via 828 group page. That's an option as well. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, folks, I hope that you enjoyed this. If you didn't, that's on you, because I know I got a lot from this. Thank you, T, for your authenticity, for your grace, for your presence, for your time, and for your leadership. Keep doing the amazing work that you're doing, your inward work, because it's spilling out, and the energy that precedes you is life-changing. So thank you for being committed to being a transformative leader in your home, in your workplace, and in your community. We truly appreciate you. Thank you.
Appreciate it, sis.